Yeah, the difference in the ballgame is, I think, as you alluded to, the Mets' schedule and a lot of work load on guys like Maton, catching up to him a little bit. This stuff was a little bit flat, as you said. But really, to me, it starts with Chourio. I mean, Chourio going up there, making a statement, driving that ball out to right field, tying things up, giving them some life. The Mets had been able to hold them down. The bullpen had been solid after Manaea, and they started creeping their way back into it. But if he goes out there and kind of slows that down a little bit, maybe the Mets are able to, just kind of keep that at bay. But Chourio comes up there with another huge home run. 20 years old, this kid, and the performance out of him, I think it was the difference. I think the other stuff was a product of the momentum shift, but I think Chourio got the big one. I
mean, twice to go opposite field against Manaea leading off the first inning and then against Maton. Phil Maton pitched in 31 games for the Mets this year. He gave up 1 home run. He'd pitched over 20 innings in the postseason and given up only 2 runs. He was the right call in that spot, but he was pitching for the 4th time in 5 days. And really, when you think about what has happened for the Mets over the last 4 or 5 days, this is the first time that the schedule and this backed up nature of what happened on Monday really caught up to them. The fact that they didn't have the right guy to go to in that spot who was better rested. If Maton were rested, maybe it's a different result. But now you take a shot in Game 3.
Jackson Chourio becomes the 2nd youngest player in Major League Baseball history to have a multi-home run postseason game. Andrew Jones still the youngest. But, Gary, we talked about it in the pregame, how the bullpen would shake out. And we mentioned that David Peterson could be an option, could be a classic second guess, could be a first guess. But, could he have gone to Peterson earlier in the game?
Well, there are 2 things that Carlos Mendoza could have done that he didn't do. One, he could have given Sean Manaea the 6th. Manaea was at 86 pitches, and it looked like he was doing well enough that you could have left him in. But that's probably too harsh a second guess because Garrett comes in, pitches a good 6th inning. But the bottom part of the order, if Peterson was available out of the bullpen, you had a couple of left-hand hitters coming up, you wonder whether David wasn't used in that spot. That would push Stanek to the 8th, and then you've got Diaz in the 9th. But, if Maton gets the job done there, who knows?
Yeah, I was thinking maybe bring in Diaz. If you're going to pitch him, top of the order. These are the guys that you got to get out. All right-handed hitters. Maton's stuff plays better to lefties for the most part. He's still very good. Again, it's what you have set up. He's been so good down the stretch, but again, the schedule caught up. But I was thinking maybe go to Diaz, not for 6 outs, but just for 3, and that big top of the order, obviously with Chourio hitting a home run in the beginning and just being one of their best players, if not their best player.
Yeah, and I think we could sit here because of the result. Is why we're having this conversation. Yeah, that's what the second guess is about, the result, because Maton, I think, as you said, Gary, was the right guy. It just was he wasn't as sharp as we've seen him in other situations, and you can't really put that on anything except the schedule and the usage. He just didn't have the same kind of life on his secondary pitches, especially to me. The cutter was a little flat, stayed up in the zone. The curveball, which you usually see either bottom of the zone or in the dirt, ended up staying in the strike zone for some bad results. But if the results had been better, we wouldn't have been talking about the moves. It just turned out that he wasn't as sharp, and they took advantage of it.
Yeah, and even earlier in that Adames at bat, he hung a curveball that we were saying he's lucky he got that one back before Adames hit the high cutter.
Gary, what were your takeaways from his explanation?
My takeaway is that he did everything that he could. The only question you have is, are you better off with Diaz against the top of the order in the 8th, or putting Maton in that spot and saving Diaz for the 9th if you were able to hold the lead? And as it turned out, the results didn't work. But, Carlos said he liked the matchup with Chourio, with Maton on the mound. It's a matter of pitchers, when they've worked so many games in so few days, not having their best stuff, and that wound up burning the Mets tonight.
Yeah, when you're working 4 out of 5 days, it is really difficult to have your A stuff because your body's a little sore. You might not have that quite good finish at the end. To be able to have that same zip, that the indicator for me was Maton getting outs with a sinker, which is a rarely used pitch because he didn't have anything else that he felt comfortable with, and Alvarez didn't feel comfortable with other stuff. So he started to go to that sinker, got that big double play. But ultimately, I do like what I heard from Carlos Mendoza. I think the answer was correct, and I think Gary nailed it. It's the right move with you because he only had Diaz for 3 outs. You could question maybe bringing him into the 8th, but ultimately I think he did the right thing, and it just didn't work out today.
Yeah, and I think you got to add one more thing to this whole stew, which is you got to give some credit to the Milwaukee Brewers. Even when you don't have your best stuff as a pitcher, hitters can find ways to get themselves out, especially in big moments, can overswing. You got a 20-year-old up there with the game on the line and nobody on base, and he goes up there and puts a swing like that and drives to the opposite field. And you got to give Garrett Mitchell some credit as well, because he goes up and doesn't try to do too much, knows Maton may try to get ahead of him with that get-me-over curveball. He's ready to ambush him. And so you got to give some credit to those hitters because even sometimes the best pitchers, when they don't have their stuff, still get guys out. Tonight was not the case.
You know, I'm
we
glad,
don't give credits to hitters.
I'm glad that you mentioned Garrett Mitchell, because we're focused on Churio. Garrett Mitchell didn't start this game. He was a pinch runner for Gary Sanchez earlier in the game. And remember that Pat Murphy still had Jake Bauers on the bench, who was a better long ball hitter than Mitchell is. Mitchell had 8 home runs during the regular season. Bauers is a guy who has a lot more power. He opted to stay with Mitchell. Turned out to be the right move. First pitch, got the curveball, hit it out of the ballpark. Credit to him.